Imagine a perfect world. A world with no buzzing mosquitoes to ruin your evening, no scary spiders hiding in the corners of your room, and no ants trying to steal your picnic lunch. Sounds pretty great, right? A dream come true. Well, what if I told you that this dream would become humanity's worst nightmare? Let's explore a hypothetical world where every single insect, from the smallest gnat to the largest beetle, vanished in a single night. Phase 1. The silent celebration. The first few days would be blissful. News reports from around the globe would celebrate the miracle. Malaria and dengue fever cases transmitted by mosquitoes would plummet to zero almost instantly. Companies producing insect repellent and pesticides would see their stocks crash overnight. People would enjoy the outdoors like never before. But then, the silence would start to become unsettling. The familiar chirp of crickets at night? Gone. The gentle hum of bees in a field of flowers? Vanished. The world would become eerily quiet. The planet's natural soundtrack would be missing half its instruments. Phase 2. The cracks begin to show. Within the first few weeks, the first real problems would emerge, starting with our food. Over 75% of the world's flowering plants and crops depend on pollinators like bees, butterflies, and even some flies. Without them, plants simply can't produce fruit or seeds. Crops like almonds, avocados, apples, and coffee would be the first to go. Imagine a world with no more coffee to start your day, or chocolate to enjoy as a treat. Yes, even chocolate, which comes from the cacao plant, relies on a tiny midge for pollination. Supermarket shelves would start to look depressingly empty. The variety of our diet would shrink dramatically, and food prices would skyrocket. But the problems wouldn't stop at our dinner plates. They would go much, much deeper. Phase 3. The Great Rot. We've talked about what insects eat, but we haven't talked about what eats insects. And we also haven't talked about the most important and disgusting job insects have. They are nature's cleanup crew, decomposers. They eat dead things. Dead leaves, dead wood, dead animals, and yes, even animal waste. Without insects, this decomposition process would grind to a halt. Things would just pile up. Forests would become impenetrable mounds of dead organic matter, choking out new life. Our cities would be no different. Dead rodents, fallen birds, it would all just stay there. And the smell, the entire planet would be wrapped in a sickening stench of decay, a great stink that never ends. But the smell would be the least of our worries. The food web was now collapsing. Billions of animals rely on insects as their primary food source. For them, the apocalypse had already begun. Beautiful songbirds, lizards, frogs, anteaters, bats, they would be the first to starve. Freshwater ecosystems would crash. Many fish, like trout and bass, feed on insect larvae that live in the water. With no food, the rivers would fall silent, leading to mass die-offs of fish. And this wave of starvation would travel up the food chain. Predators that eat fish and birds would soon find their own meals gone. Phase 4. The barren earth. As if things weren't bad enough, the very ground beneath our feet would begin to die. Insects like worms and ants constantly turn and aerate the soil, keeping it loose and healthy, allowing water and oxygen to penetrate. Without this constant churning, soil would become compacted, hard, and lifeless, like concrete. The nutrient cycle, where dead organic matter is broken down and returned to the soil, would be broken forever. Now, even the plants that didn't need pollination, like grass, wheat, and corn, would begin to suffer and die from soil starvation. The remaining forests would wither, the green plains would turn to brown deserts, the world's vibrant green would be replaced by a monotonous, dusty brown. So, we have a world with no variety in food, a world that stinks of rot, and a world where the very soil is dead. This was the collapse of the natural world, but the collapse of human civilization was about to begin. Phase 5. The collapse of civilization. planet without a functioning ecosystem cannot support a global civilization of 8 billion people. With mass crop failures and the collapse of fisheries, the world would face a famine unlike anything in human history. Panic would set in. Grocery stores, now mostly empty, would be looted for the last remaining cans of food. Governments would declare martial law, but it would be useless. The global economy would have already evaporated. Scientists would race for a solution. Armies of tiny drones, robotic pollinators would be deployed, but it would be too little, too late. They couldn't replicate the work of trillions of insects, and they couldn't clean up the planet-wide rot. The world's energy grids would fail. Without a functioning workforce and with collapsing infrastructure, the lights would go out city by city. Humanity, stripped of its technology and its food, would be thrown back into a new dark age. But this dark age would have no renaissance to look forward to. The very ability of the planet to support life had been broken. Phase 6, the fungal Earth. So what would be left? After a century, what would this new Earth look like? Life that didn't depend on insects would dominate. The world would belong to fungus and mold. Wind-pollinated plants like grasses and pines might survive in some pockets, creating sparse, lonely green patches in the brown. The oceans choked with dead matter would be ruled by anaerobic bacteria, turning vast stretches of water into toxic dead zones. And humanity? A few survivors might remain, huddled in small communities farming what little they could in the dead soil, forever telling stories of the green world that was lost. A world without insects isn't an empty world. It's a world of rot, of silence, of starvation, and of fungus. But of course, this is all just a hypothetical story. When you wake up tomorrow, the crickets will still be chirping. The bees will still be buzzing, working tirelessly to bring food to our tables. And the dung beetle will still be doing its disgusting but absolutely vital job of cleaning our world. They are the invisible foundation of our world, the tiny engineers that keep the machine of life running smoothly. They don't ask for thanks. They just ask that we don't destroy their homes, poison their food, or change the climate they depend on. Because the dream of a world without insects isn't a paradise, it's an apocalypse. And it's one we should all work to avoid.